What's up, Owls? This is Mr. O with your next set of flip notes for plate tectonics, standard 6E22, which you do not need to know, but if you want to know why we learn it, it is in the standards. Starting with your table of contents, this is going to be page 13, and it's going to be titled Plate Tectonics Flip Notes. Keep in mind these things while doing flip notes. You can pause the video at any time. If you have any questions about the material, write them down. I haven't been seeing that much, but as you go, if you have questions, please write them down. Please watch the entire video until the end. There will be information throughout this that will be helpful as you learn this new content. And most importantly, which I've been seeing lately, is you have to keep your notes neat. I see some of your notes and there is not a way you could read those accurately to get information from them. And this is what you'll need to study for majors and minors, and we do assessments in class. This is the information that will have that, and if it's not neat, it is not going to be helpful to you. At the end of this, you should have your entire notes completed. You should have any questions written down for me. Starting off first, we are going to define the word tectonic plates. These are huge slabs of rock that cover the entire surface of the Earth. So the crust is made up of tectonic plates. You do not have to have this in your notes, but just to get an image of the world, these are all the different plates that make up the world. There's about 14 of them, I think. You do not need to know the names of them. However, you can see that is not just one plate that covers the Earth, and these are several different plates in several different sizes, some way bigger than others. Some are based on where the continent is, and some are based on where the oceans are. So just so you know the different plates there are. Next thing you have to word is the definition of plate boundaries. And this is a simple definition. It's where two tectonic plates meet. You think about a boundary, a state boundary or a country boundary, it's where the two countries meet up or the states meet up. This is the same thing for plate boundaries, where two different plates meet up. I'm going to show you another picture. You do not have to write this down. You can see those arrows, meaning that the boundaries are moving in different directions, and that will cause different things. So we'll talk more about that when we get into class. Next thing you have to write down is you have to understand what causes plate movement. We talked about this in layers of the Earth. This would be because of convection currents in the mantle. I'm going to show a picture of that. Here is the crust. You can see that the convection currents are meeting up and they're splitting apart, which means the plates will move away from each other, which forms a ridge. And then on the other side, you have a trench forming, and you can talk, when we talk about the plates, we talk about the lithosphere. Don't have to write that down, just to give you a visual of that. You have to write down there's two types of tectonic plates. The first one is oceanic, obviously found in the ocean or mainly under the ocean, and the second of which is continental, found mostly on land or on a continent. Next thing you have to write down is the three types of plate boundaries. First one is divergent. Second is convergent. There's two types of convergent. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And the third one is transform. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to build this chart in your notes. There's plate movement. On the left side, you're going to talk about plate boundaries, divergent, convergent, transform, the different boundaries. And now we're going to talk about movement. And we're going to do that with arrows. So when you draw this, you have to know that convergent boundaries, each arrow stands for a plate. That means those plates are moving away from each other. In convergent, there's convergent collision, which you see the two plates hitting head on. And then there's convergent subduction, where they hit head on and the one plate will sink below the other plate. And the last one is transform, which means they run side by side. So they're all unique and different in their own ways. I'm going to show you a chart. You do not have to write this chart down, but just to give you an idea, you can see the two plates. So you can see in divergent, those plates are moving away, and in convergent, they're coming together. And then in transform, they are sliding past each other. You do not have to write that down. We're going to move on to the next thing. This is the next chart you have to have in your notes. This is plate boundaries effect on the crust. Each one has a different effect on the crust. So we're going to make the chart of plate boundaries and have the three major plate boundaries there, and then you're going to have the effect on the crust. And let's get into that. Divergent, new crust is created. So when those two plates split apart, magma fills up the middle and it will harden to become new crust. And convergent, old crust is destroyed. If you looked at our last chart, both of those things are hitting head on, with just like a head-on car collision. They would destroy each other. And then in transform, crust isn't created or destroyed. It's really, they're scraping and scratching against each other, and it's not forming or destroying old crust. The next chart you have to have is landforms created by different boundaries. We have the four I split up here in convergent collision. So this chart you have to make. You're going to have to understand what landforms are created at what boundaries. And depends on where they are, depends on what happens. So with the landforms created with divergent, they have mid-ocean ridges, underwater mountains, rift valleys. Now, all of them are not created at every divergent boundary, but they could be created. At every convergent collision boundary, you'll have mountains that are formed on land. At convergent subduction boundaries, you can have deep ocean trenches, coastal mountains, or island arcs. You will not have all of those happening at the same time, but some of those will happen. And with transforms, you have fault lines, which is where the two plates meet, but that causes earthquakes. So it's not really a landform created, but earthquakes are caused. Now looking at those two convergent boundaries, they have things in common and they have things different. So you're going to make this chart in your notes. Well, let's compare them. So the difference is convergent collision, what makes it unique is you have to have one of the two plates, two continental plates only, means they have to have two land plates coming together, and they only create mountains. But with convergent subduction, you can either have continental oceanic or both oceanic. So one has two land, one has one ocean. What they have in common, they're both convergent, and they both destroy old crusts, just in different ways, and also their differences would be what they make. Earthquakes is next. Chart you'll have to make is you have to understand who studies earthquakes, and then you have to study the three different types of seismic waves that will come from them. So the first one is the scientist who studies earthquakes is called a seismologist. He's obviously a seismologist because he's studying seismic waves, which are measured on a seismograph. And there's three different types of seismic waves. You have P waves, S waves, and surface waves. P stands for primary, S stands for secondary, and then surface waves. We will talk more about earthquakes as the unit goes on. Now, the last thing you have to have in your notes is the rate of plate movement, meaning how much they move during the year, and they move centimeters to an inch per year. Some boundaries are more active than others, and we'll talk about what that happens and what that causes as we go. That is the end of these flip notes. Have any questions you have written down, please make sure your notes are neat. You'll need those for the year.